Ladies and gentlemen, when a man misses you, it's not always the loud, overt gestures that reveal it. No, sometimes it's the quiet moments, the unnoticed actions that speak louder than anything else. Pay close attention to how he listens to you. Every little detail, every story, every update from your day. When a man truly misses you, he becomes absorbed in your world. He wants to know about the things that matter to you, the little victories and setbacks, the things that make you smile or frustrate you. It's not out of obligation, it's because he can't help but want to be part of your life. He doesn't just ask how you are, he wants to know why you're feeling a certain way. It's an emotional investment, a desire to connect that runs deeper than surface-level interactions. But it's not just the questions or the deep attention that shows he's missing you. Sometimes it's the absence of communication that reveals the most. You see, when a man feels the distance growing between you, he reacts differently. A man who misses you is often quiet. He might pull back, not because he's losing interest, but because he's afraid. Afraid that the gap between you is too wide, that the distance might become permanent. It's a form of emotional defense. He's protecting himself from the hurt of further separation. He's trying to manage his own feelings, but in doing so, he's showing you that he's feeling the absence of you more than he's letting on. Have you ever noticed how after a period of quiet he suddenly reaches out? It's not because he's forgotten about you. No, in fact, it's quite the opposite. When a man misses you, he can't stay away for long. The longer the silence, the more intense his need to break it. You'll find that he reaches out at random times, not because it's convenient, but because he's been thinking about you nonstop. And it's not a casual, hey, or how's it going? He's reaching out because he's felt your absence and needs to reestablish that connection. It's not out of habit or necessity. It's because your presence in his life means something to him. His calls, his texts, or even the way he makes time to see you all show a deeper desire to keep you in his world. If a man misses you, you'll also notice that his actions become more deliberate. He becomes more present, more engaged when you're together. The way he looks at you, the way he listens to you, it's all different. There's a shift in how he reacts to you. His tone softens, his body language opens up, and his attention sharpens. He's trying to make up for lost time. He wants to cherish every moment he has with you, because in those moments, he's reminded of what he's missing. This isn't something that can be faked. When a man truly misses you, his whole demeanor changes when you're around. It's a subtle but powerful shift, and it's in the way he looks at you, like he's seeing you for the first time, every time. Now let's talk about vulnerability. A man who misses you isn't desperate. No, he's longing. There's a profound difference between the two. Desperation comes from fear, fear of not getting what he wants, fear of losing control. Longing, on the other hand, comes from a place of deep emotional attachment. It's not about needing you to validate his existence, but rather about realizing how much he values your presence in his life. It's about recognizing that the connection you two share is unique, and he doesn't want to let go of it. When a man misses you, he might not always express it in words, but he'll show it in his actions. He'll open up more, let down his guard, and allow himself to be vulnerable. That's when you know he's not just saying the words, he's feeling them deep down. But it's not just the big gestures or the emotional conversations that show he misses you. Sometimes it's the small things that speak the loudest. A glance across the room that lingers just a second too long. A hand brushing against yours in passing. A laugh that feels just a little more genuine than before. These are the moments where you can feel the connection without a word being said. They're not forced or intentional. They're the result of a man who can't stop thinking about you, even in the smallest of moments. His mind is constantly circling back to you. and it shows in the way he behaves when you're together. And here's the key point. When a man misses you, he's not just thinking about you. He's thinking about the future you two could have together. He's imagining the next steps, the possibilities, the moments you two could share. And if you're paying attention, you'll notice that he starts talking more about the future. Maybe he casually mentions things you could do together, plans that include you in his life moving forward. That's when you know that the feelings he has for you are deeper than just a passing attraction. When he starts to envision a future with you, he's not just thinking about the present. He's already mentally inviting you to be a part of his tomorrow. In the end, it's clear. When a man does all of these things, it's not just a fleeting thought. It's a sign that he deeply misses you every moment you're apart. He's not just longing for your presence. He's feeling the void your absence creates, and he's trying to find a way to fill it. His actions, his words, his behavior, they all tell the same story. He wants you, he needs you, and he's not going to let go easily. So the next time you wonder if he misses you, look at the little things. They speak volumes. When a man becomes quiet, it's easy to assume that he's losing interest or pulling away. But what if I told you that silence could actually be a sign of something deeper? When a man withdraws emotionally or physically, it's not necessarily because he doesn't care. It's often the exact opposite. He's afraid. Afraid of losing you, afraid of the distance that's starting to grow between you two, and that fear manifests itself in his silence. It's a defense mechanism, a way for him to protect his heart while he works through the intense emotions he's feeling inside. You see, when a man misses you, it doesn't just affect him on the surface level. It goes deeper. It shakes him to his core. He feels the absence of you in ways he can't always explain. And when he's overwhelmed by these emotions, the natural response is to retreat. It's not because he's pulling away from you, but because he's trying to figure out what to do with these feelings that he might not know how to handle. The quietness is his way of processing the emotional turmoil that comes with missing someone. It's the space he needs to come to terms with the vulnerability of wanting you in his life. But here's the thing about silence. It's often misinterpreted. When you don't hear from him, you might start to doubt his feelings for you. You might think that if he misses you, he'd be more vocal about it. But this is where the confusion lies. A man who's truly missing you isn't going to shout about it. No, his feelings are more internal, more complex. When he goes silent, it doesn't mean he stopped thinking about you. In fact, it's quite the opposite. His mind is probably consumed with thoughts of you, about the good times, the bad times, the what-ifs that keep him up at night. The silence is his attempt to keep it all together. It's his way of managing the emotional floodgate that he's trying not to open. The truth is, men often struggle with expressing vulnerability. For many, showing emotions can feel like a weakness. But when he misses you, when he's truly affected by the distance between you two, that's when his emotional defenses start to crack. The silence, then, isn't about shutting you out. It's about him trying to protect himself from the hurt of not being able to bridge the gap. He might want to reach out, to talk to you, but he doesn't know how. The fear of rejection, the fear of not being able to fix things paralyzes him. So he stays silent, caught in his own internal struggle. But here's the catch. His silence doesn't last forever. It can't, because the more he misses you, the more that silence becomes unbearable. He's not going to be able to hold it in for long. Eventually, the desire to reconnect will outweigh the fear that's been holding him back. You'll start to see him reach out, maybe with a text, a call, or even in person. The quietness will break, and when it does, it'll be a reflection of just how much he's been thinking about you all along. His withdrawal wasn't about losing interest. It was about processing his feelings in a way that made sense to him at the time. And let's be clear, when he finally does open up, it's a sign of emotional growth. It means he's worked through his fear of losing you and found the courage to be vulnerable again. He's coming back to you, not just physically, but emotionally. He's breaking down the walls he built up to protect his heart, and that's when you'll see the real depth of his feelings for you. It's when the quiet becomes a distant memory, replaced by open communication and the raw honesty of someone who's learned to embrace the connection you share. Now, you might be wondering, how do I know if the silence is just fear or if it's a sign that he's truly losing interest? Here's the key. Pay attention to his actions, not just his words. If he's still finding ways to show up for you, even in small ways, it's a good sign that his silence is rooted in fear rather than disinterest. Maybe he's still texting you occasionally, or he's showing up when you need him. These subtle actions, no matter how small, speak volumes. They're his way of letting you know that he's still invested, even if he can't find the words to say it. The bottom line is this: when a man goes quiet, it's not necessarily a reflection of how he feels about you. It's often a sign that he's struggling with his own emotions. The fear of losing you, of not being enough, can be overwhelming. But understand this: his silence is only temporary. It's the calm before the storm of his emotions. And when he finally finds the courage to reach out, to break the silence, you'll know that it's because he can't stand the thought of being without you. It's in those moments that you'll see how much he truly values you, how deeply he misses you, and how much he's willing to fight to keep you in his life. When a man misses you, it's not something he can simply ignore. The absence of you in his life weighs on him in ways he might not fully understand, but it's undeniable. You see, a man who misses you isn't going to sit back and pretend everything is fine. He can't. The pull you have on his heart is too strong. It's like a magnetic force that keeps drawing him back to you, no matter how much he tries to resist. So when he reaches out, it's not out of obligation or routine. It's because he can't help it. His emotions are in control, and no matter how much he might try to hide them, they will always find a way to express themselves. It's easy to assume that when a man goes silent or distances himself, he's lost interest or doesn't care. But what if I told you that the very opposite is true? When he pulls away, it's not because he's done with you, it's because he's fighting an internal battle. He's fighting the overwhelming need to reconnect with you. And no matter how much he might try to suppress it, that desire to reach out to you, to bridge the gap between you, is something that he can't ignore for long. When a man misses you deeply, he'll start to feel an internal restlessness. It's not just a passing thought or fleeting emotion, it's a burning desire, a need that he can't easily shake off. Even if he tries to convince himself that he doesn't need you, the truth is that he does. The more he distances himself, the more he realizes that something is missing, that there's an emptiness he can't fill without you. And that's when the reaching out begins. You could start with a simple message, a text that says, "Hey, how have you been?" Or "I was thinking about you today." These messages might seem casual, but they're loaded with meaning. Behind those words is a man who's been consumed by thoughts of you, someone who's been unable to push you out of his mind. When he reaches out, it's because he's trying to reconnect, trying to fill the void that's been left in his life by your absence. He's not doing it out of boredom or habit. He's doing it because, deep down, he knows that the only way to ease the ache he's feeling is to hear from you, to feel close to you again. The thing about reaching out is that it's not always a grand gesture. It doesn't have to be some elaborate plan or carefully thought out words. Often, it's the small, spontaneous actions that show just how much he's been thinking about you. Maybe he'll like one of your posts or send you a song that reminded him of you. These little gestures might seem insignificant, but they're not. They're signs that he's thinking about you, trying to find ways to make you a part of his world again. It's not about playing games or manipulating the situation. It's about a man who simply cannot resist the pull you have on him. And it's not just the messages or the likes. When a man misses you, he might find himself doing things that remind him of you, whether consciously or not. He might walk past places you two used to visit, listen to the music you shared, or do activities that you once enjoyed together. These aren't random actions. They're the result of a man who's trying to relive the moments that brought him joy when you were by his side. He's reaching out in ways that are subtle but still powerful. And when he can't ignore the feelings any longer, that's when the direct outreach happens. Reaching out isn't always about trying to rekindle the past. Sometimes it's simply about trying to find closure, to understand what went wrong, or to get a sense of where things are headed. A man who misses you may not have all the answers, but he's looking for them. He's looking for signs that the connection you once shared can still be salvaged, or that there's hope for the future. His need to reach out is not a sign of desperation. It's a sign that he's struggling with the uncertainty and confusion of missing someone he truly cared about. There's an undeniable vulnerability that comes with reaching out, and it's something that a man often tries to avoid. Men are wired to protect themselves from emotional pain, and reaching out to someone they miss can feel like an act of exposure. It's putting their feelings on the line and allowing themselves to be open to whatever response they might receive. But even knowing the risks, even knowing that it could lead to rejection or uncertainty, a man who misses you will still reach out, because the pull to be close to you, to hear your voice or see your face, is stronger than the fear of vulnerability. When he reaches out, don't mistake it for a sign of weakness or indecision. It's actually the opposite. It's an act of strength, an acknowledgement that he values what you had and that he's willing to take a chance to rebuild what's been lost. His actions, though subtle at times, speak volumes. They tell the story of a man who can't stop thinking about you, someone who's been unable to move on because you've left a mark on his heart that he can't erase. So, the next time he reaches out, don't brush it off as something casual. Understand that it's not just a text message. It's the manifestation of a man who's been deeply affected by your absence. Someone who's been unable to shake the feelings he has for you. It's his way of letting you know that no matter how much time has passed or how much distance has come between you, he can't help but want you back in his life. And that, my friend, is the power of genuine longing. When a man acts vulnerable, it can be one of the most telling signs that he cares deeply. The truth is, men often guard their emotions tightly. They've been conditioned to show strength and composure, to hide any hint of weakness. So when you start to see vulnerability in his actions, it's not something that happens lightly. It's a reflection of how deeply you've impacted him and how much he values the connection you share. You see, vulnerability isn't just about words. It's the subtle shifts in his behavior that reveal what he's feeling inside. These actions are his heart, speaking louder than his words ever could. One of the most powerful ways a man shows vulnerability is through his willingness to let his guard down around you. He might not say it directly, but when he opens up about his fears, his insecurities, or past hurts, it's a clear sign that he trusts you. Trust is a major factor in a man's emotional world. It takes time for him to let someone in, but when he does, it's because he feels a connection that's worth sharing his deepest, most personal feelings with. If you've noticed him slowly revealing more about himself, whether it's his struggles at work, his childhood memories, or his biggest regrets, understand that this is him showing a side of himself that he usually keeps hidden. It's his way of letting you see the real him, the one that doesn't always have all the answers, but still wants you to know who he truly is. This vulnerability isn't always expressed in big dramatic moments. In fact, it's often in the quiet, everyday gestures that his vulnerability becomes most apparent. Have you noticed him checking in on you, asking if you're okay or how your day has been? These small but meaningful actions are a reflection of how deeply he cares. He may not always show it through grand gestures, but these small acts of concern speak volumes. They tell you that he's paying attention to your needs, that he wants to make sure you're all right, and that your well-being is important to him. It's a subtle yet profound form of vulnerability, where he lets you know that you're on his mind, not out of obligation, but because he genuinely cares. Another way vulnerability shows up in his actions is when he takes responsibility for mistakes or missteps in the relationship. If he's ever hurt you or failed to meet your expectations, a vulnerable man won't shy away from acknowledging it. Instead of blaming you or getting defensive, he will own up to his actions and apologize. This is a powerful act of vulnerability because it takes immense courage to admit fault, especially when emotions are high. When he admits his mistakes, he's not just apologizing for the incident, he's showing you that he values your relationship enough to put his pride aside and be honest about where he went wrong. You'll also notice vulnerability in the way he prioritizes you. A man who genuinely cares about you will put in the effort to spend time with you, even when his life is busy or complicated. He'll make sacrifices to be present in your life, showing up for you when it matters most. This is one of the clearest signs of vulnerability because it shows that he's willing to make himself emotionally available, even if it means rearranging his plans or stepping outside of his comfort zone. The fact that he's willing to carve out time in his hectic life to focus on you is a sign that he's emotionally invested in the connection you share. But perhaps the most telling sign of vulnerability in a man's actions is his willingness to be there for you, even when it's hard. Relationships aren't always smooth sailing, and sometimes you may face difficult moments together. Whether it's a tough time at work, personal challenges, or struggles within the relationship, a vulnerable man will be there to support you through it all. He might not have all the answers, and he might not know exactly how to fix things, but his presence, his support, and his willingness to listen are all signs that he's emotionally available. When he shows up for you in this way, it's an indication that he's not only invested in the relationship, but he's also willing to weather the storms with you. That kind of emotional investment speaks volumes about his commitment and his vulnerability. Now, you might be wondering, why is vulnerability such a big deal when it comes to a man's actions? The truth is, vulnerability is what builds trust and emotional intimacy in any relationship. It's the foundation upon which deeper connections are built. When a man is vulnerable with you, it's not just about sharing his fears or regrets. It's about allowing you to see him as he truly is, with all his strengths and weaknesses. It's a sign that he feels safe with you and that he believes you can handle the truth, no matter how raw or imperfect it might be. Vulnerability creates space for a deeper level of emotional connection, where both partners can be their authentic selves without fear of judgment or rejection. So when you notice him acting vulnerable, whether through his actions or words, don't take it lightly. Understand that he's showing you his true self, and that takes a lot of courage. It means that he's not only emotionally invested in the relationship, but that he trusts you with the most vulnerable parts of his heart. And when a man does that, it's a sign that he sees something real and lasting in the connection you share. It's an invitation to get closer, to build a deeper bond, and to move forward together with a kind of emotional intimacy that creates lasting love. Vulnerability, after all, is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength, and it's the key to creating the kind of connection that lasts a lifetime. There's a fine line between desperation and longing, yet they are often mistaken for one another. It's easy to confuse the two, especially when emotions run deep and vulnerability takes hold. Desperation is loud, aggressive, and often driven by fear. It pushes, it demands, and it expects. Longing, on the other hand, is quiet, subtle, and deeply rooted in a desire for connection. Longing isn't about controlling or forcing someone to act a certain way. It's a pull, a gentle tug at the heart, a feeling that lingers and whispers that something is missing. Recognizing the difference between these two emotions can reveal so much about a person's true feelings, especially when it comes to relationships. Desperation is driven by a fear of loss, a fear that if someone isn't there, the world will collapse. It manifests in overbearing actions, excessive calls, texts, or attempts to force the other person's hand. When someone is desperate, they're no longer in control of their own emotions. Instead, their emotions control them. They might reach out repeatedly, even when they know the other person isn't interested, hoping that persistence will turn things around. Desperation has an edge of urgency. It's frantic, driven by a belief that time is running out and that without immediate action, they will lose everything. This is the person who can't stand the silence, who cannot bear the thought of being alone. They seek validation, reassurance, and control, hoping to grasp something that seems just beyond their reach. Longing, however, is a quieter emotion. It doesn't scream for attention or try to force anything to happen. It's not about controlling the other person or demanding they respond in a certain way. Longing is patient. It waits. It yearns without pressing. When someone longs for another, it's because they've felt something deep, something real. They can't simply turn off the connection they felt or erase the impact someone has had on their heart. There's a sense of peace with longing, an understanding that things will unfold in their own time, but still, the desire to be with that person remains. Longing is not about desperation for control, but about a deep sense of missing someone, a gentle ache that lingers over time. It's more about accepting the absence and cherishing the presence when it is there. The key difference between the two is in the energy they put out. Desperation is often frantic, while longing has a sense of quiet surrender. Someone desperate will chase, will try to create a sense of urgency, while someone who longs will simply allow the emotions to exist, acknowledging their presence without trying to control them. It's an understanding that sometimes things are out of our hands, and that's okay. Longing doesn't mean that a person has given up hope. It simply means they're not pushing. They're allowing things to unfold naturally, trusting that time will tell whether the feelings are mutual or if the relationship will ever come to fruition. The longing remains in the heart, even if the person is miles away or even years apart. When a man longs for someone, his actions often reflect this subtlety. He may not be constantly bombarding you with messages or demands for attention. Instead, he'll find quiet ways to show that you're on his mind. Maybe he'll reach out every so often to check in, to see how you're doing. He might send a song that reminds him of you or share a memory that left an impact on him. These are small gestures, but they're meaningful. They're expressions of longing, not desperation. They show that he's thinking about you, that you're still in his heart, and that even though you may not be together, there's still a connection there that he cherishes. These actions aren't demanding or aggressive. They're simply his way of letting you know that he's still present, still feeling the pull toward you, and still holding on to the hope that something more could come from the bond you share. Desperation, on the other hand, comes from a place of insecurity and fear. A man who is desperate will try to make things happen even when the signs are clear that you're not on the same page. He might try to push your boundaries, make you feel guilty for not responding, or repeatedly remind you of how much he misses you in a way that feels overwhelming rather than genuine. Desperation doesn't respect the space and time that is needed to allow feelings to develop or fade. It only wants what it wants, right here and right now. It's driven by the need for instant gratification, without considering the other person's emotions, needs, or boundaries. This is where desperation becomes toxic. It disregards the other person's feelings, turning the relationship into an obligation or a challenge to win. Longing, however, doesn't demand anything. It simply exists in the heart, waiting for the right moment. It allows the other person the freedom to decide what they want, without any pressure. There's no expectation that the other person will reciprocate or that things will work out as imagined. The longing is still there, but it doesn't need to control the outcome. It's in this subtlety that longing can be so powerful. It speaks of patience, respect, and emotional maturity. It acknowledges that love or connection can't be forced. It's about recognizing the beauty in the distance and understanding that sometimes the waiting is part of the journey. A heartfelt connection is one of the most profound experiences you can share with another person. It's a bond that transcends words, a deep sense of understanding and mutual respect that brings two people together on an emotional and spiritual level. When you experience a heartfelt connection, it's as if time slows down and the world around you fades away, leaving only the feeling of being truly seen, heard, and valued. It's more than just attraction or chemistry. It's an energy that flows between two people, an invisible thread that pulls them closer and creates a sense of unity. One of the most striking features of a heartfelt connection is the way it makes you feel. It's a warmth that fills your heart, a comfort that tells you you belong here. In moments of vulnerability, when you allow yourself to be open and raw, this connection deepens. It's the kind of bond that doesn't require constant affirmation because the connection itself is enough. You don't need to be reminded of your worth or the importance of the other person in your life. You just know. It's an intuitive, unspoken understanding that strengthens as time goes on, as you both continue to invest emotionally in the relationship. When this connection is present, everything feels effortless. You don't have to force anything. It just flows naturally. Conversations are easy, and there's a sense of comfort even in silence. You both understand each other without having to explain everything, and the little things become meaningful. Whether it's a shared glance, a gentle touch, or simply spending time together, these moments become sacred. It's as if you're both in tune with one another's hearts, and the connection creates a safe space where vulnerability and authenticity can flourish. A heartfelt connection doesn't just happen overnight. It's built over time through shared experiences, deep conversations, and mutual respect. It grows when you allow yourself to be open, to truly see the other person for who they are, without judgment. It's easy to create a connection with someone based on surface-level attraction or common interests. But a true heartfelt connection requires emotional depth. It's about being willing to show up for each other even when things are difficult. It's about being there during the good times and the bad, supporting each other through life's challenges and celebrating each other's victories. One of the most powerful aspects of a heartfelt connection is its ability to create emotional safety. When you feel safe with someone, you're able to share your true self without fear of judgment. You're able to express your hopes, dreams, fears, and insecurities without worrying about how the other person will react. In this space, there's no need to pretend or wear a mask. You can simply be yourself, and that's enough. When someone genuinely listens to you, validates your feelings, and cares about your well-being, it fosters a sense of trust and security that allows the relationship to deepen. This emotional safety is essential for building a heartfelt connection because it creates the foundation for vulnerability, intimacy, and true understanding. At its core, a heartfelt connection is about love. Real, unconditional love. It's the kind of love that doesn't require conditions or expectations. It's the kind of love that shows up even when it's hard, even when it's inconvenient. It's the kind of love that accepts you as you are without trying to change you. This kind of love is rare, but when you find it, it's something you'll cherish forever. It's not about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It's the little things that matter most. It's the way someone holds your hand when you're feeling down, the way they make you laugh when you're having a bad day, or the way they support you when the world feels like it's crashing down. The beauty of a heartfelt connection lies in its ability to make you feel complete. When you're with someone who understands you on a deep level, it's as if you found your missing piece. You don't feel alone, even when you're apart. You carry a sense of peace knowing that the other person is out there thinking of you, supporting you, and cherishing you. It's a quiet kind of love that doesn't demand anything in return, but offers everything you need. A heartfelt connection isn't always easy to find. It requires patience, vulnerability, and a willingness to be open. It means putting aside your fears and insecurities and allowing yourself to truly connect with another person. It's about being honest, even when it's difficult, and showing up for the other person in ways that go beyond words. It's about building a foundation of trust, respect, and emotional support that will carry you through life's ups and downs. When you're in a heartfelt connection, you can feel the difference. It's like everything clicks into place. You feel understood, valued, and loved in a way that is truly transformative. This connection allows you to grow both as an individual and as a couple, pushing you to be the best version of yourself while also embracing each other's flaws. It's the kind of love that doesn't fade over time but only deepens with each passing day. It's the kind of connection that makes life feel richer, more meaningful, and more fulfilling. In a world where superficial connections are becoming more common, a heartfelt connection is something rare and precious. It's not something that can be manufactured or forced. It's something that happens when two people are truly in tune with each other, when they are emotionally available, and when they are committed to nurturing the bond they share. This kind of connection is what makes relationships truly special, and it's the foundation upon which lasting love is built. When you experience it, you'll know that you found something extraordinary, something worth holding on to for a lifetime.